Hello, my name is Huda Barakat, and I am going to be reflecting upon the process of my magazine, Lux Design. Here is my magazine, my table of contents, and my 2-page spreadsheet. The genre I decided to pick was home living/interior design. However, I specifically wanted to focus on luxury interior design and the minimalistic style, which leaned towards more a modern aesthetic. Starting off with the first question, how does your product use or challenge conventions, and how does it represent social groups or issues? Given the fact that it is a luxury home magazine, I noticed that the social groups that fall within this genre tend to be part of the upper middle class and beyond. I noticed that in a lot of these specific home magazines, the page isn't as crowded and bombarded as some casual home design/inspos. Meaning the cover lines aren't as crowded together. It's a very minimalistic editing tactic. There aren't as many cover lines. It's just as minimal as possible. And another convention is that the cover lines always include a location spotlight to highlight prestigious locations and luxury markets around the world to show product association with upscale living. So, for example, I decided to base my home here in Florida, which adds to the genre and aesthetic of the home given the fact that Florida is known as the Sunshine State. Other examples include European countries and more specific states. So for example, there's Vogue Australia Living, there's another magazine, Florida Design. I use these for inspiration to see how they're structured, to see how they have their cover lines and mastheads on. I noticed that in the Florida Design, it's very, very minimalistic, and there's not as many cover lines as a normal magazine would have. And the Vogue Australia Living, it's this one's a bit more crowded, but it's not as crowded as the other casual interior design homes. This one presents like a sense of elegance while still maintaining that minimalistic look to it. Question number 2. How does your product engage with audiences, and how would it be distributed as a real media text? Well, the first way that comes to mind when in terms of engaging with audience would be through the most common and accessible way, which is online presence. The first thing I thought of was platforms like Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, because it makes it easy to distribute my product while also giving inspiration and being able to engage with a specific target audience who are looking for the common aesthetics regarding the magazine. Another way would be through immersive workshops and events. In these events, there would be things like exclusive designer events, luxury home viewing and tours, and last panel discussions featuring distinguished designers coming to engage with the audience and bringing the content of the magazine to life, making it more enjoyable for the audience. For distribution as real media text, my magazine offered subscription packages for readers who prefer a hard copy of the physical magazine. This caters to both preferences regarding digital and a printed copy, as well as collaborations with other mirroring companies to expand my distribution work, which will potentially reach a newer and broader audience, which will also eventually expand the business, all in all. Question number 3. How did your production skills develop throughout this project? Well, before completing this project, I noticed I wasn't as strong in many aspects as I should have been to be able to complete my final project correctly and thoroughly. Specifically, things like correlation with genre and font, layouts and style of cover lines and mastheads. I also typically wasn't a magazine reader, and I never went out of my way to try to be, but I did have an insight on how they were structured. I had also never used the platforms Canva or Blogger before this, so that was also a new, intimidating experience for me. Although this project wouldn't be my first time editing photos and tweaking them a bit, I realized that my editing skills did get better and they did enhance with this project, and I was able to nitpick specific details to enhance a photo and make it look its very best. Specific things like lighting, angles, shadows, brightness, contrast, exposure, vibrance were all aspects of editing, and those were very little like detail oriented things that actually make a huge difference in the product of the photo. So I made sure that I did that very thoroughly. I made sure I saw the difference in lighting and vibrance, because it really did change not the aesthetic but the tone of the photo, which would affect the overall the finished product. The same thing could be said about my photography skills, which again, I didn't necessarily lack in. However, I did progress in the process of this project. And again, with the editing and the photography, I noticed that it was a very, there was a difference between like a couple months before I took a picture and then after conducting research and seeing pictures and seeing angles and seeing how to take the picture correctly to get the perfect product. That changed a lot. And again, after conducting research on a variety of different magazines throughout the year, actually making my own magazines and using different genres for practice, I started to better distinguish the correlation between the genre and the type of masthead, font, cover lines, their places, etc., because that all correlates with the mood, especially the color and whatnot. I eventually strengthened the skills to have the most accurate outcome of a true magazine with practice and lessons. I was very grateful I did this, because I made a seemingly impossible and stressful task, in my opinion, become an enjoyable one where all my creativity could let loose. So it's safe to say that my prediction skills did in fact sharpen. Moving on to question number 4. How did you integrate technologies, software, hardware, and online in this project? First, the majority of my project was completed on my iPad Pro. I did have to switch between my MacBook desktop and iPad Pro a couple of times just for the sake of convenience. I also did actually use my iPhone 13 more than my iPad to take all my pictures, and my main source of editing actually came from the Apple Photos editor, to adjust the lighting, to adjust very specific nitpicky details. That helped a lot. And I also used other platforms that included Airbrush, Adobe Color. Airbrush helped with the angle mostly, and it did help with the color scheme of it. I did use some contrast and vibrance on Airbrush. However, I did the majority of those specific details on the actual iPhone editor on photos. And another thing I used was Adobe Color. This was extremely helpful because, again, setting the tone and mood all depends on the color. I think color is very important, and I needed to set that. I needed to make sure that was set first to see where my magazine is going, what genre, what aesthetic. And it helped me find the theme, and it also matched the mood and genre that I was aiming for specifically. And I was very happy regarding that. I used Airbrush on my phone. I used the Apple editing on my phone, and I used the Adobe Color on my iPad. And the most common software would definitely be Canva. I used Canva for the big chunks of my magazine. I did it all on there, and that's where the photo was edited. That's where I put all the mastheads, all the specifics, all the details. And in terms of research, I did mostly rely on Google as my search engine. It's the most accurate and it's the fastest, and I went on Vogue, I went on a lot of home magazines, and that helped a lot. I got a lot of inspiration. And To actually conduct this critical reflection, I'm using iMovie and voice memos on the iPhone app. Thank you. This is Lux Design Magazine. I hope you enjoyed.